All right, so for our 16th league, we have Incursion. So Incursion added 39 new Labyrinth Enchantments for existing skills and 43 for new skills. Enchantments of existing skills which have undergone significant reworking may not appear anymore due to mechanical changes, making them non-functional, such as enchantments which modifies the cooldown of trap skills. Existing versions of these enchantments will now grant increased damage with that skill at the same value. Added 6 new Nemesis mods, and the item filter now supports sorting by gem levels, stack sizes, and explicit item mods. This is really, really big quality of life stuff. For our Xena mods, we had Invasion, Warbands, Anarchy, Fortune Favors the Brave, Beyond, Domination, Abyss, and Breach. Incursion. In this league, players will run across Alva, who creates an incursion that takes the player 2,000 years back to the Temple of Atzwatl. While in an incursion, the player can open passages and kill architects to change or upgrade the room, which affects the temple's layout in the future. After 11 incursions, the temple in present time can be raided for loot and special altars, which modifies items. Added temple items, Vial of Awakening, Consequence, Dominance, Fate, Summoning, Ritual, Transcendence, Sacrifice, and Ghost. And then added the following unique items: Apep Slumber, Coward's Chains, Architect's Hand, Story of the Fall, Mask of the Spirit Drinker, Dance the Offered, Tempered Flesh, Tempered Spirit, there's another one, Sacrificial Heart, and Soul Catcher. There's Flesh, Spirit, and one more. I can't remember the name of the third one is. I'll add it into the link though. All right, for Incursion itself, it is now on the core device. There's a link to the league. There's a link to the temple. There's also a link to all the different incursion rooms in case you were not around for the league. That way you can look at the rooms as well as all of their upgrade paths available and what they do. Incursion was positively received, even though the fan base was a little split on the mechanic. Lots of players really enjoyed the mechanic, while several did not like the amount of clear speed needed for it. It is now a core to the map device. Incursion is one of the ones that I would like to see get more of just the in-game treatment on. So right now, as it sits, if you invest heavily into Alva and you run Incursion a lot, you're going to get several temples. If you don't invest heavily into Alva, you don't really get to ever experience the end game. And since we can now trade temples, what if we just drop temples instead of dropping the Incursion device? Like, I get that it adds mobs to maps, and some players will always like it just for that impact. And you could still make it a mod to have the temple on like a map mod or like a sextant or something. I'm sure they could figure out a way of doing that. But it really just feels like the temple is the reward, and maybe just making it more rare and just giving us access to temples, and then we could trade temples for the temples that we don't want versus the temples that we do want to run would be really, really neat. I'm not sure, and especially like with eye level too, because if you can drop it at any point in time, it makes it always worth running the highest level map that you have, because then you could always get the higher level temple, which then in turn could have a map room to get you more maps. And so I kind of am leaning more towards, it's a cool mechanic. The problem is trying to get 11 outside of the league where you got them every zone feels more difficult than needed. And maybe just having the temple mechanic itself would fix that problem. And it would let you engage with the best part of Incursion as often as possible, while not dealing as much with the worst part, which is looking at all the rooms and trying to figure out what you want. Now, that knowledge would still helpful because it lets you select the best temple to run for what you're trying to achieve. But that's just something I think would be better overall. Like if they took a swath of what a player's temple looked like, and I'm not talking about the most min-maxy version, but if they took it like a heat map, right? And they said, oh, most players get this room over this room, and put that logic behind it. Maybe not smart loot, but maybe like have 10 variants of temples that all have specific things they focus on, and you get one of those 10 variants. And you could even call them a different name of each of the temple mods. And then you could make them rollable, where you could, add rare to make them harder, or magic to make them a little bit harder, and add additional quantity of items. Something like that could be really, really fun and would be worth exploring, especially since we can now basically have temple maps. I think it's a really good time to swap over to that just being what Incursion is. And maybe it's not needed on the map device. Maybe there's something else that could be better served on the map device than Incursion. I don't know. I feel like going that route would just basically be better for the game long term. And it would really help with the bloat problem, because like, especially with it and Harbinger, if both of those were essentially relegated to, well, Harbinger basically just being removed and Incursion being relegated to Temple, you would have less bloat in the average map, but you would still get the same reward mechanic that made Alva worth running in the first place, even if it was at a lower rate for the people that really invested into Alva and at a higher rate for the people who didn't. It just seems like it would be a cool way of doing it, where maybe they're not super uncommon, but they're not, I wouldn't put them as common as people that focus on running Alva all the time, but I would put it more common than people that don't focus on running Alva at all. Where you see a fair amount of temples every league. I think something like that would be really, really cool. But anyway, I will catch you on the next one, guys. Have a great day, Exiles.